welcome back to another episode of Behavioral Grooves. I'm Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. Today, we're diving into a conversation that challenges many things that you might think you know about technology and mindfulness. Our guest is Jay Vidyarthi, author of Reclaim Your Mind, and he's got a radical proposition for you.
Yeah, and here's the thing. While everyone's telling you that technology is hijacking your brain and you're powerless against all of the algorithms that are out there, Jay argues that we've got it backwards. The problems, as Jay sees it, isn't that tech took our agency away. The problem is that we forgot that we still have it.
Jay's a fascinating guy. He's a product designer who runs teams in Silicon Valley.
So he's very deep in the tech world.
Very much so. But he's also spent a lot of time on meditations and silent retreats. He's not anti-tech. He's pro-intentionality. And he believes the solution to our tech overwhelm isn't digital detox or shame-based boundaries. He has a more nuanced approach.
Or not. It might be radical depending on your current perspective, but maybe not. Anyway, what Jay suggests is definitely counterintuitive. We need to fall back in love with our technology. Right? While simultaneously becoming more aware of how we use it. Oh, I got to get that way. All right. Yeah. It's about fighting design with design and reclaiming not just our minds, but our technology as well.
Yeah. So if you've ever felt guilty about binge watching Netflix, beating yourself up for scrolling social media, thank you for raising your hand. Okay. And wondered if there's a middle path between tech addiction and digital monasticism, this conversation is for you.
That was a big word, monasticism. I can't even
digital
pronounce
monasticism. You like that?
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, this was a conversation that Tim had with Jay because I wasn't available at the time we recorded this. And I can't say big words like monasticism and different things like that. Don't even know what they mean. So you'll just have to make do with Tim's questions, knowing that they're really big and use big words, and that all the really great, insightful questions were left out because I wasn't there.
Jay, look, Jay turns out to be this very musical guy. We had an excellent discussion about music.
And I rest my case. That's all I'm going to say. So sit back with a strong pour of intentionality tea
and enjoy our conversation with Jay Vidyarthi. Jay Vidyarthi, welcome to Behavioral Grooves.
Nice to be here.
It is so good to have you on the show. Like, we've had these chances to talk offline, and now it's really great to have this as a recorded conversation. We've got a couple of important questions to get out of the way. And of course, we want to know, coffee or tea?
Coffee now, but tea sometimes.
Okay.
It's a seasons of life thing.
So it's like years at a time? It's not like coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon?
It's on a roughly annual schedule at this point. Like last year, I was doing a lot of morning tea, and then I've been doing more coffee this year. And actually, this year, I started drinking my coffee more at like 10 or 11 and not first thing when I wake up.
Oh.
Because I was like managing kind of an energy drop around like 2 or 3. And so, practicing a lot of self-awareness of, the psychoactive substance we all drink every day, caffeine.
And is it working?
Yeah, it's working a lot. Yeah.
You like it? Okay.
I do. I really enjoy getting the boost over lunchtime and not really kind of falling off the energy cliff till later.
There is that, isn't there? There is. Yeah,
there really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's great. Okay. Second speed round question. Would you rather learn a new instrument or a new language?
A new instrument for sure. I mean, I'm a musician, and guitar is actually, it's a funny story. My guitar is like my heart and soul. I love playing guitar, and I'm self-taught, so I'm not even that great at it, but I can feel it. Mm-hmm. And over the pandemic, I decided to try to learn some piano because I think I was like wrestling with my guitar a little bit. And there was something so liberating about being bad at it because I've just been playing guitar so much that I noticed that I demand so much of myself from the guitar. And there was something
Yeah.
liberating about playing piano and having permission to be like, I don't know how to play this. And so it can
Right.
sound bad, and that's
Right,
okay.
right.
Yeah.
Or that lovely experimentation and innovation that comes from, I don't know what I'm doing, and I might stumble on something that I like, and wasn't planning on that. That beginner's mentality is kind of cool.
Absolutely. And that's actually what you said is totally what happened. Like I sort of stumbled on like stride bluesy piano. And I think it was like inheriting some of my sensibilities from guitar. And like, when I picked up the instrument, I was like, I'm going to learn some Beatles songs and I'm going to, you know what I mean? But I ended up just noodling around with kind of blues scales, and I found it super fun. And then at
Oh.
some point I learned like music from video games from my childhood, which was also super like, I don't know, like what's interesting about video game music is like, especially in role playing games, you might spend like 40 or 50 hours wandering this virtual world, listening to the music, like hanging out in the inn where there's no battles. And now like I hear the inn music from like Final Fantasy, and it like calms me down. I'm like, oh, there's no threats. I'm okay.
Wow. 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 Okay, we're gonna have to get more into the relationship between the virtual world and the real world
Yeah.
coming up. Okay,
That's why we're
third
here.
speed.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. Third speed round question. Excuse me. Is it possible to enjoy screen time without guilt?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would
Okay.
say it's not just possible. I mean, I would encourage it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on a similar vein, is it possible to enjoy binge watching TV shows mindfully?
One thing that is inherent in that question is the dripping shame of the word binge.
Yes. Yes.
So, if you took the word binge out of that question, I would say yes. It is possible to watch TV mindfully.
Hmm.
I would say if you're talking about binge watching TV, I mean, I think the language we use matters. And
Yeah.
right away in the framing of the question, you're diminishing your ability, not removing, but diminishing your ability to be mindful because you're already criticizing yourself.
So that's we have to get into that. I do want to just pull back just a bit to get to the title of your book is Reclaim Your Mind. And so I want us to just start by asking, have we sort of lost agency or lost our connection with maybe the most important bodily asset that we have to reclaim it?
I would say yes, but not entirely. I think we always have agency. Maybe we've lost touch with that agency.
Okay.
But here's the kind of rub is that I think when most people hear that in modern society, the first interpretation is they took it from us, right? Is that like they took our agency from us. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
reject that outright. Okay, like don't get me wrong. There are some real challenges with tech today. There are some design patterns that are manipulative. There is an attention economy that's trying to harvest attention for profit. We need scientists who are starting to understand the impacts of these technologies, which is still in debate as far as I understand, right?
Mhm.
Regulators are starting to think about it. There's like conversation about banning tech for kids.
Yeah.
All of this needs to happen. We need to explore these questions. But I think what has happened in the kind of public narrative about this is individuals have forgot that they still have agency. That, maybe it's not easy to manage your relationship with technology, but it's absolutely important to do. And this is an issue that shows up in bedrooms and in kitchens and in boardrooms and in hospital rooms and in pubs and in schools, where in these little micro mundane moments of our lives, the more that we can find and reclaim our agency of how we interact with these technologies and how we intentionally choose to place our attention, we can reclaim that agency in every moment. And I think there's a public narrative that makes people feel powerless, like victims of forces larger than themselves, and that we all have to kind of hold our breath and wait for regulators and tech companies and scientists to come save us. We need that work
Mhm.
to happen, but there's a lot we can do in our own lives and in our kids' lives to restore that agency.
Yeah. Why is that? We why do you think we have sort of lost that sense of I can control tech? or maybe the counter is, why is it that so many of us feel like tech is controlling us?
I think it's confusing. I mean, I think, one of the reasons I wrote the book was I was just kind of looking around in my life. Like, I work in tech. I'm a designer. I run a company that we design
Right,
technologies.
right. You're not an anti-tech, flag
Yeah,
raiser.
that's right. I
Yeah.
also grew up playing video games and like tinkering with code. And like, this is kind of my world. In my early 20s, I felt a little meaningless and started to find the meditative path, which is sort of like, my parents are from India. It's not an exotic, esoteric thing for us. It's more of like a family heirloom, but it's one that I basically rolled my eyes at as a kid.
What don't we roll our eyes at as a
Yeah,
kid that our
especially
parents
when our
do?
parents are concerned, right?
Yeah, right.
But so then I ended up in my 20s kind of stuck between these two worlds where I was, wanting to go on silent retreats, and like I would feel very fearful to tell everyone that I love The Legend of Zelda on a meditation retreat. But then meanwhile, I'm in these tech circles, especially, 10, 15 years ago, where, it's a grind set hustle culture. And like
Right.
the idea that I'm going to, if I told everyone, hey, I'm going to take a week to go to Cabo and I'm going to get messed up and I'm going to party all weekend, I'll see you guys in a week. Everyone would be like, great, have a good vacation. But if I told them I'm going to take a week to go to a mountain and sit still and close my eyes and pay close attention to the subtleties of experience and see if I can draw insight and self-knowledge that might transform my life and my understanding of myself and others as spiritual beings, they would look at me like I was like, what are you talking about?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Culturally, so you had to reconcile these two sides of you to some degree, right?
Yeah,
How did you
that's
do
right.
it? In your 20s, you started to
Painstakingly.
combat this?
Yeah, painstakingly. I mean, but I think, with a science education, I had an attitude of experimentation.
Mhm.
And my dad has a PhD in chemistry and like basically raised my brother and I like to debate things scientifically. So it's just an
Wow.
experimentation mentality. And so I started trying things and questioning the two dominant narratives, which goes back to your previous question: why are people like kind of having this confused relationship with technology? It's, I look around and I see that confusion because it is full of hypocrisy and um, oxymorons, right? Like, oh, I love technology. I connect with my family and friends on all these platforms, and it's so nice. But also, I'm addicted. I'm binge watching like these heavy words, and it's ruining our lives. It's like, wow, we have this global conversation about public events, yet it's polarizing us and destroying democracy. And like, there's just all this stuff that's happening that feels so big and contradictory that we're all feeling super confused. And for me personally, in my 20s, the two dominant narratives was either I was going to be a tech guy, right?
Yeah,
Or I
right.
was going to be like a mindfulness guy, and that there was no way to be both. And I just started to question those assumptions because I was like, the more I looked in the mirror, I was like, but I am both. So how do I show up in the world in this way? And so I started to ask questions like the one you asked earlier, like, can I watch TV mindfully? How do I identify where the traps are with technology and deal with that in a mindful, intentional way? But also, how do I not lose the joy and fascination that I've always had with technology? And so I've been wrestling with those tensions for my entire adult life, basically.
Yeah, you sort of reject the idea that there's just a big pendulum and we're either on one side or the other, right? But I think you make the case that there is a happy medium, that there is a stable middle ground for the human condition.
It's funny you use the metaphor of a pendulum, because I would say that yes, there is a middle, but the pendulum will swing, and part of finding that middle is embracing its swing. And that's something I definitely like is a hard won insight from my own pendulum, of
Yeah.
recognizing that, like, what was the problem? Was it technology, or was it that in a season of life where I used a lot of technology, I beat myself up about it? And then when I went off on retreats, I felt like disconnected and like a lot of FOMO, and I missed my video games. So what did I do?
Yeah.
I beat myself up about it again. And so here I
Wow.
am just beating myself up about it all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to embrace that swing to find the middle, right?
So in your path, how did you find the middle?
Yeah, well, it's like I said, I've been gradually kind of trying to discern strategies in different areas of technology, but a
Mm-hmm.
big part of it was skilling up on awareness and insight. So the meditative path has been a big part of my journey, from long-term retreats to daily practice to working with teachers to trying to understand how technology can support.
Mm-hmm.
And the science is getting pretty clear that some of these faculties are skills that can be trained, which is counterintuitive. I think people have heard of like neuroplasticity. We know at this point that
Right.
our brain can change, but something like awareness, or the ability to intentionally choose where to place your attention, like your vector of attention within this mysterious field of awareness that defines our lives, right? Like,
Yes.
seems like, first of all, the backdrop of our lives that most people probably don't even think about. But then the more you look at it, you're like, actually, our entire lives are simply a series of moments of attention placed within a field of awareness. Like, it literally is the fundamental grounding of our life experience. But then, even more of a surprising stretch for people, like when you guide them in meditation, is the recognition that not only do I seem to not have control of this attention, like my mind just flits all over the place, but with more practice, I actually can skill up in the ability to be more intentional about where I place this attention. And even more counterintuitively, like we're going layers up here, is that I can't force it though. It's almost like trying to lead a child or a puppy. Like, you can't just like force it. Like, a cat would be a really great example. I have two cats. And it's like, I can't just be like, hey, kitty, can you go to the other room now? Like, no, that's not how cats work. But you can influence cats if you're skillful, and your mind is like a cat in a way. Like, you can actually gently, lovingly guide your awareness and notice its patterns and learn insights about yourself and how your context affects it. And all of that is something I could be saying about mindfulness in general, but it does also apply to our interactions with technology. We can pay very close attention to our relationship to technology and make very skillful adjustments that don't require a ton of work and willpower to heal our relationship with it.
So you're optimistic about the role of tech in our lives. You actually believe that it does. We don't have to be. Tech doesn't have to be the dog that's wagging us on the tail.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
My optimism comes in our potential to harness that.
Yeah.
The question becomes like, how do we learn to do that? How do we learn to do that at scale? How do we better manage our technology to make it easier to do that? Because
Mm-hmm.
the reality is, like, I'm in San Francisco this week, and like I could go out on the sidewalk and talk to anyone, and they will know for sure that exercise and eating healthy is good for you. But knowledge is not all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
knowledge is not always enough. So the
Right.
question becomes like, the first step is embracing what we talked about earlier, that we do have agency in this.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
now there are some layered questions about, okay, well, how do we actually, behavior change and all these elements that might be relevant.
Well, let's talk
Yeah.
about what are some of the things that, as you said, awareness in general of the problem is abundant. Let's talk about some of the sort of practical applications for what we can do, because this is not just, and it's not just. I mean, talking about setting your phone aside, or how you use a mindfulness app. I think we should talk about that, but underneath all that, of course, is dealing with the guilt and shame and the framing of just the way that I framed that question about binge watching your favorite TV show. Like, that is
Mhm.
just so ever present. So that's a big universe of questions in there. So where would you want to start?
Well, the first strategy in the book is start with awareness. And you mentioned awareness of like the problem space and the situation, but I actually think there's an intimate awareness of your own relationship with technology. Like, you and the listeners and everyone have all heard a million tech strategies, like little ideas, like tips and tricks. Hey,
Yep.
get your phone out of your bedroom, disable your notifications, whatever have you, right? But which tips to apply to your life is deeply dependent on your intimate awareness of your own patterns. And I think that's where you start. Like, when I'm working with someone on this, the first thing is, let's take a day or even a week to just watch closely, like which technologies tend to trap you? Which ones do you get joy from? Which ones do you get meaning and purpose from? Which ones do you find authentic connection? Which one brings inauthentic connection? Which technology sends you ruminating for hours? Hint, hint, work email, right? Like which technology, like, can you almost use without friction that you can enjoy and move on from? And what you'll find is that, yes, you probably fit into some of the general narratives, but there's probably some unique elements about your personal relationship with technology, which are most likely related to who you are and your life experience and what your deeper emotional needs might be in this moment. Like if you're lonely and isolated, you are higher at risk of social media trapping you into a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
But if you've got like a beautiful social life in the world and you're having dinner parties and things, social media is probably just a joyful addition to your life, right? And the same could be said about video games and work email. And, so I think when we get into strategies like seeing through the illusions of these technologies that can trap us, yes, setting up our physical and virtual environments to reduce the burden on our willpower. But if we go deeper a layer, like what is the healthy emotional need, this part inside of me that's trying to take care of me in this moment? And I'm not hating that part. I'm loving that part. I understand, like, thank you for trying to take care of me by recognizing that I'm lonely and trying to find connection online. But I don't think the connection online is fully satisfying me right now. So we need to find another way to find connection right now. And what you'll find in that moment is not only does that address the deeper need and you end up finding a deeper connection in some other way, but then you can kind of go on social media and it won't trap you anymore because you've addressed the deeper need, right?
Yeah. So you're, and when we were reading the book, it just hit me so hard that you kind of have to do the work yourself. It's not like the 5 easy steps to just becoming a billionaire. If you just do this, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that about the way that you approached the book. And because you're also, so we have to start with our personal setup, our context, right? From awareness, where do we go next?
So one thing that comes to mind immediately is boundaries, right? So I think in the context of this, we've all at some point had the experience of trying to set a boundary. Like, I'm only going to use this app for 30 minutes a day, or I'm only going to check work email on my laptop and not my phone, or I'm going to not let my phone in my bedroom, or I'm not going to watch too much TV.
These sound like things that are easily broken.
Yeah. And they're broken constantly. But I think one of the ways that people immediately frame this, again, is with this valence that tech is bad. It's like this toxin that we need to set boundaries on because we need to protect ourselves from the evils, the devils of technology.
It's fear.
Yeah, it's fear. That's right. And that leads to, when we break the boundary, the guilt, right? You're just like, quietly sneaking, looking at your phone and feeling bad about it. Right. Or like I, mentioned earlier, like melting down on your kids because they love video games. Right. Like just, there's obviously a lot of complexity in raising kids with technology, which we can get to, but I'm almost certain that shame is not the way forward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think there's something about the boundaries where we're losing the joy and the positivity that's possible. So one of the things that I recommend is, when you set a boundary, you should also, like, when you're reflecting on something that's problematic in your life, you find a technology that, I'm stuck on video games, or I'm stuck on work email, or whatever it might be, to also identify what you love about that technology and try to set a boundary in a way where you are simultaneously limiting the trap while emphasizing what you love about it. And in the book, I reframe the boundary to use the word ritual. And that brings a lot more positivity to it. So I'll give you an example from my life, which is, I have a boundary / ritual around TV where I'll only watch one show a day. Like, I don't want to just watch a lot more than one thing a day, right? And the ritual I have around it is that I'm going to get like a tasty snack and I'm going to get a really good drink. I worked at a movie theater as a teenager. I'm going to channel that energy. Like we used to get on Thursday nights, we used to get to, like, I remember we got the projector cans of Gladiator, and we got to watch it before it was out. It was launched on the weekend and we got them on Thursday. So, we just like set it all up and we had to test it, of course. So we just set up a little private screening.
Wow.
And it
How
was
fun
magic,
is that?
right? It was magic. And like movies are incredible. We love stories. We love TV. It's like the currency of the human mind is story, right?
Right.
And yet we're in this feeling where it's like every time we watch TV, we're feeling bad about it. Like we're wasting our time, but TV's amazing. Sure, it can trap you and maybe you shouldn't spend 12 hours a day watching it, but maybe you've had a rough patch and you're grieving and you just need 12 hours of TV today, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But for me, the ritual is like, get a nice drink, put the distractions away, very intentionally choose, like, where am I at today? And do I really want to watch something profound? Like, not mindlessly. Put it on, put the distractions away, and enjoy it. And then turn it off, right? And it's like, yes, there's a boundary, but there's a positive ritual to that I look forward to, and like, really harkens back to my childhood. And it's just like an interconnected, positive part of my life, as opposed to this just like whipping myself with this. I keep watching reality TV and I hate myself. Like, that's not the way.
Well, it also, I love that because it also serves the ability to say, when you're done, when you have watched that hour, that going into it with the mindset of, this is what I want out of it. I want to connect with something. I want to just enjoy the hell out of that for an hour. And and you're done with that hour, then you've actually fulfilled something that you wanted to do, rather than just sort of drifting mindlessly in and out of the harbor and not really knowing if you're going out to the ocean or you're staying by the shore. You choose, and that agency is magnificent.
Absolutely. And the constraint breeds intention, because what I choose to watch feels so much more of an important choice when I'm only allowing myself to watch something, and I can really enjoy that. And sometimes I've even done a little practice. My wife and I had this little game at some point where we would, we noticed we were getting trapped into that ocean of rectangles where you're just like browsing all the things you could watch. And then 30 minutes have gone by and you're kind of like tired and you can't make a decision. So we played this little game where we said, we're going to like go into the like display screen where you have options. And the first thing that we show even remotely any interest in, we're just going to hit play immediately. Like, we're not going to hesitate at all. And the first time we did this experiment, we ended up watching a show that I would never have chosen to watch. Like, it was called Indian Matchmaking. And it was a show of this woman who, it's like a reality show where she's like matchmaking Indian couples or whatever. Not only was it amazing and it was hilarious, my parents were from India. It was like a cultural reconnection. And I felt like, my parents rebelled against arranged marriage and had kind of a love marriage, whereas a lot of their extended family had an arranged marriage. And I felt like I understood my parents better watching this show. And I never would have chosen to watch it. But like, I just like noticed this flit of interest, and I just followed that rule and hit play. And so that was like a fun little experiment. But I think it shows the way that I'm interacting with technology in daily life is this experimental way of like, how do I not only limit the traps, but find that joy again? Because I grew up with so much joy around technology and TV and video games, and a lot of us did. And I think that's one of the tragedies, that like, I'm not only advocating for us to reclaim our minds, but to reclaim our tech too, right?
Yeah. And I want to revisit this and reinforce this idea. You work in tech. You're not an anti-tech guy, but you also have talked about sort of fighting design with design, like getting on the side of, let's be intentional in the design. Could you talk a little bit about that?
That's right. So I practice a form of design called human-centered design, and practically it's often referred to as user experience. Academically, my education is in human-computer interaction. Lots of jargon in this field.
Human-computer interaction.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So it's like,
it seems so obvious, but it's also like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if scientists study the way humans and computers interact, and we can use that to draw conclusions and understand our interactions with technology, but also to design
Yeah.
it better. Anyway, that all being said, I was attracted to human-centered design because of the heart of it. It was really about care. It was about when we create things and put them in the world, let's understand who we're creating for in their context and try to be of service. But the tragic reality is the incentive structure of the world and of the tech economy. Most people trained in design and human-centered design are being asked to manipulate people, to use the tools to understand people so we can better manipulate them, to buy, to click, to subscribe, to vote a certain way, to, you know what I mean, to think a certain way. And so there is a complexity in the design profession, which I can get into, but, I'll summarize it by saying, like, as a designer, kind of with my professional hat on, like in San Francisco this week, I'm at a conference where I led a workshop on, like, advocating for a North Star for the design profession, which is like, we need to have a compass ourselves as a profession.
Yeah.
That is not necessary. Like, because all the designers I know are like mystified by the fact that they have to just like try to get everyone to click the red button, as opposed to like the promise of like being a person who creates meaningful solutions in the world. And so in reality, when you and everyone are confronting these technologies we have in our pockets and on our screens, we're confronting like an ocean of patterns and choreography of attention that's intentionally created to guide us into certain purchasing decisions and voting behavior and other types of behavior change. And so one way that we can combat that in our daily lives is to think like a designer ourselves. Like, do I need a TV in this room, or does it keep distracting me from my kids? Right? Or one thing I do is like, I keep my smartphone tethered to the charger at home. And I don't shame myself for needing to use it. But when I need to use it, I need to walk over to my office and use it. So I can't just pull it out in front of my 6-year-old and just be like, 1 sec. Right? So bringing a lot of intention to the way we set up our physical environments can help release the burden on our willpower, thinking like a designer. But then also our virtual environments. What do we have access to on our home screen?
Yeah.
What are some of the tools we can find online to limit the way we interact and to, shape our relationship with technology in the moment? And the more we fight design with design, the more we're empowered. The more AI starts to change the game, the more we might be able to customize the way we interact with technology. And so I think there's a bright future in saying, this isn't just about grinding it out and like trying to lock your phone in a safe and like bang your head against the wall, that we can really be smart about shaping and designing our lives the way these designers are designing the technology. And then there's a whole track about the design as a profession needing to evolve in that as well.
Well, are you concerned about AI doing your job without that kind of human-centered lens?
Yes, absolutely. And I've been actually ramping down projects this month. I'm taking a little sabbatical this summer to reflect on that and a few other questions. But, I've been playing around with, I have a design process with my company, Still Ape, and there are AI tools for every step of that process, right? There's AI tools to help with discovery and synthesis, AI tools to create user interfaces. There's even AI moderators for research. Like, you can set up a platform, like list a bunch of questions, and it's just going to go out and run 15-minute calls with people. And the robot is going to ask these questions, collect the data, analyze the data, and give you like, here are the themes of the research, right? Like,
wow.
The platforms are getting insane. Now, here's the reality. I've played with these tools and they're not very good. They don't do a good job. They don't capture context. They don't capture nuance.
But at the same time, they're getting better, right?
They're getting, exactly, right. At the same time, they're getting better. And already, as someone who runs a design studio, when I'm talking to potential prospective clients, they're all asking like, why should I pay you to do this? It seems like there's tools to do it.
Yeah.
And so one of the big questions I'm asking is like, I feel confident like that the heart of this is actually going to be more valuable. Like, I have been fighting against the grain as a designer for a lot of my career to try to take a heart-centered approach of like, we actually care about the people we're designing for. But I actually think that's going to become like rarer and more important because that's something that the robots can't do. And, we can program them. That's like the alignment problem with AI. But there is a real challenge, I think, in, the future of how we create things because it's going to be very tricky. I mean, I can summarize that by saying, the social media era taught us the pitfalls of training powerful technology to narrow incentives.
Yeah.
Right? Like the news feed was like, we're just going to show you what you are most likely to click on. And then 10 years later, Zuck is testifying to Congress and he's like, oops, I broke democracy, guys. I don't know what happened, but I was just trying to meet girls at Harvard and I made a Facebook and I accidentally broke democracy.
Yeah.
Right.
But we created that. We collectively created all that.
That's exactly right. Like this is a manifestation of the human mind and our society mapped onto the way we're using technology. And technology doesn't have to be used in this way. And so that's my worry about AI is like, if we keep going with this narrow incentive structure as the technology gets more powerful, it's not going to work. It's going to cause problems. So another way to say this might be like, going back to my own personal journey with this and as a mindfulness practitioner and seeing all the other wellness and mindfulness people telling us to
and I'd even
get off
say
our screens.
A mindfulness activist.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
As an attention activist, seeing all of the people in the wellness space say like technology is bad and it's ruining our lives and we should, get away from it. Ironically posting that on social media, right? It's like, here's a video of me in a white dress in the forest being like digital detox, and it's like click like and subscribe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
the height of irony. Yeah.
Yes, of course. And so, when I see that and I think about the next step, I am very convinced that for this new evolution of technology, there's nothing we need more than like wise people to engage with technology. Because what happens if the wisest of us choose not to engage with technology? We're already seeing it. Like if the most conscientious, empathic, compassionate people are like, "Ooh, this technology is not for me," then all the majority of people are on the technological platforms with no wise people to guide them. And then similarly with the companies, if there's no wise people who are trying to guide the incentive structures of those companies, where does that leave us? So I feel like to use the word activist that you brought in here, like I feel a call to action to say like to all of my fellow people who care about their mental health and well-being and, even potentially spiritual people, this is the time to lean into technology. It's much needed. It's not going away. So it kind of behooves all of us to make sure it's as wise as possible.
Yeah. That's beautifully said, Jay. Thank you. I love that. Yeah. Bravo.
Hey Groovers, quick break from the conversation to talk about something we don't bring up enough on the show.
Yeah, that's right. When we're not behind the mic, we're working with organizations to apply behavioral science in ways that actually move the needle for leaders, teams, and whole cultures.
So whether it's designing smarter incentives, boosting engagement, setting goals that actually stick, or helping teams navigate change, we bring real science to real workplace challenges.
And we don't just talk theory. Our approach blends research-backed insights with hands-on strategies that drive results. Now, we've seen small behavioral shifts lead to big wins in Fortune 500 companies and scrappy startups and even in mission-driven nonprofits.
Yeah, and we bring the same curiosity, creativity, and care to our client work that we bring to every episode of the show.
Really, I think people might want more than what we bring to the show.
You probably have a point there. You're probably right.
Okay, so we'll bring more care and creativity to our work with you and your teams than what we do on the show.
Yes, more care. So if you're ready to build stronger motivation, better team dynamics, and maybe even make your workplace a little more groovy,
yeah, reach out to us. Grab us on LinkedIn or Facebook or just drop us a line. We'd love to help you and your team find your groove. You are certainly a mindfulness activist, but you're also self-awareness is not just an early part of the book, it's self-awareness is foundational in your life, right?
Yes.
So you just mentioned briefly that you're winding some stuff down and you're going to take a little mini sabbatical. I'm curious, on this show, we talk a lot about finding your groove. And you actually brought up the term going from a grind into something better. Kurt and I often compare being in a groove to either being in a grind or being in a rut, and the groove is sort of that sweet spot in the middle. What role does self-awareness play in finding your groove and staying in your groove, do you think?
It's a really important question for me right now. 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was, working. My son is struggling with school, and I had. It was the second day in a row we're having a big fight in the morning to try to get him to go to school, right? And I was tired. There's a lot of projects were coming to a head, and I was pushing him and getting really frustrated, and eventually we got him off to school, and I went back and I kind of took a quick bite to eat, and then I sat down at my desk and I looked at my calendar packed with meetings and my email inbox overflowing, and I glanced at a few and they were problems that needed to be solved, and I need to help my team. And after the 2 to 3 hour battle with my son, I was I'm already done for the day. And I have 8 to 10 hours of intense work that I need to do. And I felt, easily a moment that a younger version of me would have just collapsed. But with self-awareness, I noticed that, right? I noticed in my body, I noticed this tension. You might even say I looked at the horizon and I noticed the looming burnout, right? And a younger version of me would not have noticed that and would have driven right into that sun.
Right? And just burned right out.
Yeah, off the cliff into the flames of the sun, right? And then
I'm envisioning a Thelma and Louise moment here.
That's right. And maybe even a month later, when I'm just I don't know, who knows, self-medicating or whatever I might have been doing. Wait a minute, what happened? But this time, I think I saw it 4 weeks early, and I said, oh, stuff's going on at home, stuff's going on at work. This is around the time I'm researching these AI tools, and you can only imagine, I'm sure many of your listeners can relate, how it feels to be in a job, or in my case, an entrepreneur, and just watching AI tools pop up that just do your job.
Yeah.
And being okay, well, I don't think this is going to replace me, but I'm obviously going to have to redefine everything to figure out how to surf these waves.
At the very least, it's disconcerting.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And as I say, the very least, it's okay, well, I need to pivot and reframe. There's a bunch of new work I need to do now. Yeah. At the very least. And also when you have a team, you're what does this mean for my team? Do I have to let go of some of my team because it just doesn't make financial sense because people won't pay, and who knows, right? Anyway, lots going on. But this time I saw that on the horizon and I took the off ramp on the highway. I was just okay, here's the plan. I talked to my wife about it, and I was we are just toning down and, sending emails to cancel projects and unwinding things and just saying, we have some big questions. At that point, even the questions were murky. Now I'm getting more clarity, but somewhere in here is a lot of uncertainty that needs to be addressed. And so I've been kind of ramping things down. And what's really interesting about it too is when I was younger, I was a musician, I was creative, I was interested in science and research. I went to grad school and loved tinkering. And when I started to get in this field, I really had this compass that was you can have a positive impact on people's well-being. And so I created a part of myself, which you might call the entrepreneur part. And that's not a core part of my being. I wasn't one of those kids who's 12 years old at the lemonade stand, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, at all.
That wasn't you.
That was not me at all. So I created this part out of necessity. And this part has been taking care of me and helping me run this business. And as I start to unwind it, it's very upset at me. Like the feelings that I have when I'm like sending an email to a paying client and being like, I don't think I'm going to be available this summer. This part of me is like, its whole job has been to keep the projects coming and keep them stacked and keep the team busy, right? And what's really been interesting about this transition is like recognizing, there's a kind of therapeutic modality called internal family systems where you look at this like internal parts of yourself and recognizing like this part is part of me. It's trying to take care of me. And it's like, I don't dislike this part. I love this part. But it's like, this is the part that's going to lead me into the sun. And this is the part I need to like put on a shelf for a moment as I reconsider and like focus on rest and rekindling some depth in my practice and like spending time with family. And that kind of self-awareness, to go back to your original question, I have learned from teachers, I've learned from practices, I've learned from experience that I can very clearly in this moment see my mid-20s burnout in comparison to this situation. And I take a lot of solace in that spiritual maturity it takes. And I'm like, something about what I've been practicing and learning is really paying off here.
You said something that was really interesting in describing this acknowledgement and awareness of what the problem is. You talked about uncertainty, and you acknowledged that there are a lot of things that you haven't figured out. It's not like you woke up one morning, had this realization, and instantly had a complete plan in your mind with the 40 steps that you were going to take to make that happen. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? I think that, and the reason that I'm asking is because I think a lot of us feel like I can't take that step to say no, or I can't take that step to choose that new professional career path because I don't know what all of the steps are. I'm nervous. I'm anxious about not knowing what all the steps are going to be to get there, or whether or not I'll be successful. Yet you've embraced that uncertainty.
There's no way new seeds can sprout if you don't clear space in your garden. And there's no way to like grind, to use your grinding language, there's no way to like grind out gardening. Like
Wow.
hustle culture and gardening don't work. Like you have to be kind of patient. And I think there's like, in some ways, life is a lot like gardening, and like parenting is like gardening, and like managing yourself and is a lot like gardening. And so, how does one clear their garden to create room for new seeds to grow, given the level of fear and discomfort that we have with uncertainty? Well, the logical conclusion is to become comfortable with uncertainty. And that might be a very beautiful definition for meditation, is to become comfortable with uncertainty. One of my teachers often points out that like the human mind is like ravenous for answers and comfort. We feel safe when we know, and we feel safe when we're comfortable and feeling pleasure. But that's not the same thing as like lasting fulfillment. That there is, a way to explore being happy, independent of external conditions, to use his language. A great teacher, Shinzen Young. I saw him yesterday, actually, at this thing in San Francisco. And like, yeah, is it possible to be happy, independent of conditions? And that's a skill. And I think a huge pillar of that skill is being comfortable with uncertainty. And if I can put a microcosmic layer on that, I think a lot of us are kind of like going throughout our lives safe in our concepts. Like, this is who I am. This is who you are. This is how the world works. And the more we believe that, the more we feel safe. And I think we've all had the experience where something or someone questions one of our core concepts and questions. And we can have big emotional reactions to that, because it's almost like someone is shaking one of the pillars holding up your chair, and you're, like about to fall, because they're shaking something like, oh, maybe it's not all about like work hard and be successful. Like, that's an example of a concept that I think a lot of people work with. And I think, this is a big disconnect between boomers and Gen Z, where boomers are like, why are Gen Z so lazy? Like, work hard and be successful. And Gen Z are like, that's not the world we live in anymore. Like, we're all in student debt and there's no job opportunities and the housing market is out of control. Your equation was great for you because you rode an upswing of the market, but we're not in that. So that, and so there's a lot of disconnects between those two generations, for example. So I think being comfortable with uncertainty, if I had to digest, like, what is the secret to happiness? I don't know what the answer to that question is, but if I had to like put my chips on the table,
okay,
it would be learning to befriend discomfort and uncertainty. That would be the key.
That is fantastic, Jay. Thank you for that. Where would you put your chips on the table if you had to pick two musical artists to take with you on a desert island for a year?
Ooh,
you knew this question was coming.
I love this pivot. I think I would have to say the White Stripes for sure.
Yeah.
And
not just Jack.
Witches. Definitely not just Jack. I mean, I love Jack because of the White Stripes, but actually we can get into it if you want.
Tell me more about this. It's interesting because I think a lot of people think about sort of the brutal creative drive behind the White Stripes is Jack. So, like, if you pick Jack, you get the White Stripes and all the other projects he's done. But you name the White Stripes first. I think that's really interesting.
Well, speaking of ideas that can shake people's fundamental assumptions in an uncomfortable way, I think Meg White is one of the best drummers that's ever lived.
There you go. Okay.
Now, here's why. Okay, first of all, because I think the White Stripes sound better than any of Jack White's solo stuff. And I've thought about this a lot because they're one of my favorite bands. But I'm a musician. I've played with lots of drummers. I've played the drums in a band. You know what I mean?
Right.
I have never, ever, ever played with a drummer who is so selfless, whose entire reason to be on the stage is to simply do the bare minimum of what's needed to make this song great.
Yeah.
Without even a drum fill. Like, she never plays a drum fill ever. Right? And Jack White is a prolific songwriter and like creative genius, and his fingers are lightning and his tones are incredibly unique.
Yeah.
But when he lost Meg White, in my opinion, a lot of people love his solo music, but in my opinion, it kind of went off the rails and all over the place. And I'm sure he's having fun. And I'm so grateful for the music of the White Stripes that I hope he's having fun, and I encourage him to continue having fun because like he deserves it. But musically, like from an art perspective, the White Stripes are a yin yang, a counterpoint of that like generative, powerful, creative energy with selflessness. That is just absolutely beautiful. I could listen to it forever.
I love that because I recently saw an interview with Stuart Copeland, the drummer from the Police, and he said, my job is to disrupt things because all I do is bang on loud things. And so my job is to disrupt. And basically you just said, well, why should the drummer be the disruption force in the band? And why not the rhythm section? Like, the selfless side of the rhythm section. I love that. That's beautiful. I interrupted you before I heard the second artist that you'd take with you.
So I fell in love with the White Stripes as around 20, and it like became a huge motivation and was definitely the band I listened to the most in my 20s.
Okay.
As I got older, the next band that I had this deep connection with is a band called All Them Witches. They're from American South, and I mean, I don't know how to describe them other than like they exist they exist seamlessly at the intersection of like all of my favorite genres. Like there's an element of blues, there's an element of grunge and folk and metal. They're not afraid to get like heavy in like in almost like a metal way, but then they have other songs that are like completely acoustic blues. And I've seen them live a couple of times and just, I don't know. I mean, I think the context for me is like, when I was 20 and I was picking up these guitars and like trying to put bands together and going to a lot of concerts and like jumping into mosh pits, I wasn't very self-aware. I was just doing what I was doing, right? I was like, pound a beer and go to the mosh pit and like fight people, right? It's just like, why would I do that? But as you get older, you start to reflect and you're like, okay, so there's an element here about masculinity. There's an element here about like brotherhood, about like getting out there and like feeling your body in a way that society doesn't often allow men to just like hug and like,
Yeah.
so there's a
Yeah.
piece of that. But once I was on a meditation retreat and we were about to go into a second 1 week silent period, so it's like, meditating 10, 12 hours a day for 7 days kind of thing. And I was trying to steel myself up for it. And so I sat in a meditation posture and I put on this song called Orion by King Buffalo. It's sort of like a grungy metal song, it has a big kick in and like cosmic riff. It's like, just sounds like it's in the size of the universe, basically.
Wow.
So
big.
Orion is the right name for it. Anyway, so I sat in meditation and I listened to this song at like full volume. And I felt like my nervous system was just activated. Like I could feel goosebumps and I could feel waves of sensation because I was like tuned into that meditation space. And I felt like I got a glimpse of the seed of the thing that led me to do all of that when I was younger. Something I didn't feel when I was 18, 19. I didn't actually notice directly, but for whatever reason, I was just mindlessly listening to this music and finding these things out.
Yeah.
And so there's something about like All Them Witches that like I can reliably put All Them Witches on and just feel my nervous system light up with joy and pleasure and awe. And like, what could be better than that? So I could listen to them forever on the desert island and I would be there and I'd be like, I don't need food. I don't need anything. I'll just chill on this desert island and let my nervous system be a symphony of cosmic riffs.
Well, Jay, I'd like to observe that because that just looks like the best desert island experience ever. and I want to thank you, Jay, so much for being a guest on Behavioral Groups today.
Thanks for having me. This is so much fun. And like I said, I've listened to a bunch of episodes of the podcast, so it's kind of great feeling to be here.
Welcome to our grooving session where Tim and I share ideas on what we learned from Tim's discussion with Jay, have a free-flowing conversation, and groove on whatever else comes into our tethered to the charger brains.
Yeah. We don't have to be tethered to the charger.
But we are.
But there, you've literally got your phone in your hand.
I'm like, hey, I got
I've got my phone in my hand.
Here we go. No, I got an email coming in. I got whatever it is.
But we don't have
social media.
to be.
I need to scroll. There you go.
Yeah, I love Jay's principal idea of it's not that we've given up our agencies. We haven't reclaimed it. We've just kind of. We just need to live into the fact that we do make decisions as humans, and we can.
Yeah. So I wasn't part of that conversation. I really wish I would have been. It was fantastic when I listened to it. So I'm going to basically just ask you some questions here, Tim, for this grooving session. So
I hate this. All
so
right.
help us understand the context of all of this, right? So we think that technology is bad, but that's not Jay's perspective.
Right.
Help me understand that a little better. Help our listeners understand that a little bit better.
So he's a tech guy, right? He's an insider. And so he doesn't believe the tech is inherently bad. There is some bad design, and that his idea is that we need to fight bad design with good design. And maybe more importantly, instead of trying to just overcome everything with more willpower, right? We've heard this many times from many guests. It's not about white knuckling your way through. It's not about just more willpower to make sure. It's actually about creating the environment in your life, redesigning your physical and digital environments to adequately support the kind of tech habits that you want to have.
Okay, so let's dig into that. So what were some of the key pieces of that, and let's get back to this tethered to a charger piece, right? So what is that? What does that mean? Yeah.
Well, we have talked about this a lot, Kurt, that design is not a neutral thing. Right. I think probably the first time that I became aware of it was in thinking about being design architects or being behavioral architects in Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein's Nudge.
Yeah.
Right. We're always, regardless of what's happening in our world, there is some element of design. When we put stuff on a shelf, we're designing. and we can design behaviorally. And if we have some intentionality about that, we can make better decisions. Jay related this when it comes to sort of the architecture of nudges towards addiction or attention. Like, what are we going to focus our attention on? Like, even like the way of organizing your phone, having the apps that are going to be the most seductive, the ones that get you into the most trouble, bury them, make them harder to get to. Just add that little bit of friction just to make it more difficult to get there. And so it's not that you're saying, I'm taking that app off my phone. I'm just saying, I'm going to make it more difficult to get there.
I like the idea that the tethered part, right? Keep your smartphone tethered to a charger. It has a cord. It's like our old phones. It's like
right.
Next to the wall.
Yeah.
And it just makes it so that you don't have that mindless use of it so much.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And anything to add to that?
Well, it's. I think it gets into this revolving theme that we talk about in behavioral science about adding friction to the things that are bad and reducing friction on the things that are good. It's force field. It's behavioral judo. It's Kurt Lewin. It's like this. All of this stuff continues to come together, and Jay's applying it, and I think in a really great way. So we need to, but the premise is intentionality. We have to be aware, and in order to be aware, you have to kind of start tracking. Well, how much time am I spending on that app?
Well, it goes back to what Daniel Crosby was saying, right? Track where your time is being spent. Do that for a couple weeks, and it will be eye-opening for you as to where am I spending time, and get it pretty detailed. It's that. Track your calories. And I love the tracking calories. I remember a story of this person who goes, why can't I lose weight? All I'm drinking is coffee. And then the person who was like going, well, do you put cream and sugar in it? Oh yeah. I put, I put like a whole bunch of cream and a whole bunch of sugar and I just drink coffee throughout the day. Well, you're getting a number of calories from that cream and sugar. Yeah, that's why you're not losing that weight. And if we don't realize the cream and sugar that we're ingesting, we're not going to be able to change those behaviors or to understand them in order to achieve that.
Jay also he did have just this one thing that I thought was really interesting, the idea that sort of turns shame around this into maybe a strategy by recognizing your emotional needs. Like if you just have this desire to spend some time on what the Kardashians are wearing, indulge yourself. And also limit it. Like you might limit alcohol or drug use. I don't mean to sound severe, but make an intentional limit. I'm only going to have one drink tonight. I'm not going to have any drinks tonight. I'm going to have, I'm going to approach my social media consumption in a way that says I'm going to it. I'm going to save it for the end of the day. It's going to be an indulgence.
You tether it to, so we talked to tether to the wire, but you tether it to some other activity that you're doing. It's almost like what Katie Milkman talks about in tying in, I only get to watch this when I'm going and working out. I forget what that's called. The idea, though, is, hey, make sure that you're setting yourself up for this is something that I want to do. But in order to do that, I need to be doing something or setting a limit around where it is. There are also technologies out there that will limit how much time you spend on social media.
Yes.
You can, it'll like, okay, your day limit is done. You've set this up in a cold state, in your rational cold state, saying, hey, I want to make sure that I am not overindulging. So I'm going to put these limiters on my phone. And now when I'm in that hot state scrolling through, oops, 5 minutes left. Okay, I'm done with it for the day. Those are ways to use technology to help you.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to pepper me with questions about my conversation with Jay?
Yeah, how much music can two people talk about and still make it feel actually relevant? I don't know.
He's a lot because he's just got these fantastic influences, and things that inspire him, and it was just a lot of fun. It was
All
just a
right.
lot of fun. Yeah.
Should we wrap up?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So,
I think that Jay showed us that the best way to resist the tech isn't about just opting out, but it's about sort of leaning in, but with intentionality. It's about fighting design with design. It's designing your own life in a way that allows you to deal with the designs in the apps, basically.
yeah. So people design your own life by going out and joining the Facebook Groove community. Because you'll not only get great tips and different things, but you'll get a daily groove question. You'll have
Yeah.
a community of people who are out there helping you to understand how you can use technology better, various different pieces like that. So please go out there and intentionally design your life around the group community that we have.
So tether yourself or untether yourself from the evils of tech and tether yourself to your own agency and lean into fighting design with design and use those this week as you go out and find your groove.